And Peter Hitchens, you're with us for the duration of the programme to talk about all the big issues. Theresa May, there in Davos, not exactly centre stage, Simon Jack was telling us. It feels as though this is part of the kind of continuing narrative of the problems Theresa May's got.
Well, what is she doing there? Anyway, Davos was described to me as finding the worst restaurant you know, going to it on a snowy evening and sitting listening to a man talking about Bitcoin in a Peter Ustinov voice. A wholly pointless boondoggle. What is she doing there when it seems
representing
to me...
Britain, presumably, if Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron...
To whom? To lots of other people who are going on boondoggles. By the way, Theresa May can't go on a state visit to the United States because she's not head of state. Only the Queen can do that. So, whereas President Macron being head of state can be, so that can't be on offer. And as for the special relationship, I thought everybody now knew that the special relationship was a joke and a myth and that it doesn't exist. If she's looking for it in Davos, she won't find it there either. It seems to me her problems are at home.
But if she is going to meet Donald Trump, and that has been sort of hurriedly arranged for them in Davos, does she have to try and restore better relations?
Well, I don't know what you can do. The man is such a complete loose cannon that it's impossible to know what he will do next and what he would make out of any meeting at all and whether it will benefit her or not. In whose eyes is somebody standing improved by being able to meet Donald Trump? Not mine, for a start, and I can't be alone. So it's the baffling thing that happens to politicians who fail at home, is they try to prance around on international stages looking more important than they are. And it doesn't seem to me to be a wise thing to do when you have, it seems to me, yet another, how shall I put this, possible putsch against her being planned.
Now, the former Prime Minister David Cameron is also in Davos, and he has been overheard by the television cameras talking about Brexit. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
See you again, really nice. Good, actually. I'm busy doing the book, and I'm doing this fun with China, which is interesting.
Everyone is talking about Brexit.
Yes, well, I know. It's frustrating. It's, as I keep saying, it's a mistake, not a disaster. It's turned out less bad than we had. It's still going to be difficult.
A mistake, not a disaster, is what David Cameron described Brexit as there. Of course, you were on the other side of the EU referendum for him, but are you surprised to hear him saying that?
Well, no, but then he didn't really understand what he was doing. And also, it's a bit of a Mandy Rice-Davis, isn't it? He would say that, wouldn't he? Before the vote, he would have said it was a disaster. Now, it's happened, and he is quite rightly viewed by many people as responsible for it. He has to say it's a mistake. And a mistake not made by him, of course, but by the British people for voting to leave in the referendum which he himself called.
And you voted to leave. Are you?
I didn't vote.
You didn't vote?
No part in the referendum. I didn't want a referendum. I hate referenda. I think they do terrible damage to the
But you wanted Britain to leave the EU?
I want Britain to be independent, but not this way. And I think...
Because what do you make of how negotiations are going so far?
I think negotiations... I was a labour and industrial correspondent for many years in the 70s and 80s, and all negotiations end at the last minute. And it would be foolish to imagine that just because things seem to be going badly now and look difficult now that they won't reach a conclusion, because they will reach a conclusion when the last minute comes. The only question is what form the compromise will take.
And you would like Britain to stay close to the single market, possibly in the European Economic Area?
I think the Norway option is the best one for us, and I think it would satisfy several things. First of all, it would avoid the terrible consequences of becoming a third country if we left, which would be really, really difficult. These aren't tariffs; these are the huge bureaucracies at frontiers that you face if you become a third country trading with the European Union. And it would also, actually, because of the little known but important Liechtenstein option, give us a chance to control our borders as well. And we would not have to take anything...
This is what Brexiteers like Jacob Rees-Mogg describe as being a vassal state. You'd be a rule taker, not a rule maker, because you wouldn't be defining the rules of the single market, you'd just be accepting.
He can say that if he likes, but the problem is this. In 40 years of being in the European Union, much of Britain's muscle, its independent muscle, has atrophied. And we really aren't in a very strong position to march out into total independence and sovereignty at the moment. And if we try to do so, I think we might stumble. It's perfectly sensible for a politician who's making a name by being a militant on this issue to speak like this. But the trouble is there will have to be a compromise. And those of us who take the future of the country seriously, or even try to take the future of the country seriously, must wonder what sort of compromise that can be, which would suit both sides. This wasn't a huge, overwhelming vote to leave. It's a narrow one. And therefore we have to accept that there will be a compromise when it comes, which isn't exactly what anybody...
Now, as we've been hearing, Downing Street has challenged a suggestion by the Chancellor Philip Hammond that any change to the UK's trade relations with the EU after Brexit could be very modest. For more on this, let's talk to Brexit supporter Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's the Conservative MP for North East Somerset and joins us from his constituency. A very good morning to you. So that distancing of Number 10 from those comments by Philip Hammond, has that been emphatic enough for you, and does it represent the sort of fundamental change of tone that you've been calling for?
Well, I'm very reassured that Number 10 Downing Street is sticking to the Lancaster House speech and to the Conservative Party manifesto. It's a pity that Number 11 Downing Street is undermining government policy, and I'm very reassured that the Prime Minister and her office has been so clear. And of course the Prime Minister is authoritative. She is First Lord of the Treasury, the Chancellor Second Lord.
You said in a newspaper article earlier this month that it's essential that the PM and Chancellor improve their working relationship and advocate the same policies. No government works when these two figures are not united, you wrote. So what are the problems going forward as you see them?
Well, I think this is not a good position for the Chancellor to be in, to be undermining the Prime Minister, that it is of the utmost urgency that he should unite his position with that of the Prime Minister and with that of the Conservative Party. I think a little bit of freelancing in Davos is very unhelpful.
Well, there's been freelancing going on by various members of the Cabinet recently on various subjects, hasn't there? But, I mean, do you think that Mr Hammond's position is in doubt? Should Theresa May have a very stern word with him or replace him even?
Well, I think 10 Downing Street's clarification is effectively a stern word. It's clearly an implied rebuke for the Chancellor, but it's a matter for the Prime Minister whether or not she has confidence in him.
Well, in fact, actually, we have just literally received a line from the lobby from a spokesperson for Theresa May saying that she does have full confidence in Mr Hammond. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I fully support the Prime Minister in delivering the Brexit that she has set out in Lancaster House and in the Conservative Party manifesto, that I think will bring huge benefits to the country, cheaper cost of food, clothing and footwear, helping the poorest in society most. And if she's got confidence in the Chancellor, that's good enough for me.
Now, you've warned that the 50 members of the European Research Group, of which you are chairman, could withdraw support from Mrs May if she looks for a new customs union or a variation of a customs union with the EU. You're shaking your head there. I was just going to ask you, but obviously you can't have that customs union.